Hello and welcome to my podcast, Become. My name is Sabine Kvenberg and I am your host. The content will inspire you to reach your aspirations and become the best version of yourself. I feature interviews with successful individuals from various industries delving into their personal and professional journey, how they overcame adversities, and the strategies they used to achieve their goals. We have to become the person we are meant to be first, so we can live the life we are destined to live. That also means we must overcome challenges and work through difficult times to learn, grow, and become the next, more fabulous version of ourselves. I'm so glad that you're here. Let's get on this journey together. Welcome, everybody. Sabine here. And today I have a wonderful guest. As always, they have extraordinary stories, and today is no different. Holly Francis is the author of Life Support, Surviving GBS. And you might think, what is GBS? Well, she will explain it. It's really the true story of how she turned her medical horror after the birth of her daughter into a crusade by helping others. She's a mom in a blended family of 5 and the face of Holly after GBS on social media, where her recovery videos have inspired millions of people around the world. And today, she will inspire us. So welcome, Holly.
Thank you so much, Sabine, for having me on your show.
First of all, can you explain to our listeners what is GBS?
Yes, so GBS is called Guillain-Barré syndrome. It's named after the doctors that discovered it. It was discovered about 100 years ago. And what it is it's a rare autoimmune disorder. And I like to compare it to multiple sclerosis because most people do know what MS is. And it's kind of similar. And so MS, what it does is it affects the brain and the spinal cord. And what GBS affects is the peripheral nerves. So those are all the nerves, not including the spine and not including the brain. And so basically every nerve in your body is affected by GBS. And what Guillain-Barré syndrome, how it starts is it sees a trigger. So something happens to your body. Typically, a doctor is able to pinpoint it to some sort of trigger, but not always. Something will happen, whether that's a flu or a virus, surgery, hormone changes. There's very many things that can cause an autoimmune response. And our immune system is very good at reacting and fighting off infection. But with GBS, it continues to fight and it then begins to attack the healthy body. And so it begins attacking itself and it begins attacking the nerves. And basically, what it's doing is it stops the brain from being able to transmit signals to those nerves, causing weakness, tingling, pain, and potentially paralysis in more severe cases.
Wow. Why don't you start by taking us where it all began?
For sure. So I would like to start off by saying that I had never heard of GBS before, and most people haven't. It is a rare disorder, so it only affects about 2 out of every 100,000 people, which that's not a lot of people. And so I'd never heard of it before, and I was actually completely healthy and never had any health issues in my most of my entire life. So I was 26. This was just over 12 years ago now, and I was recovering at home from having a C-section with my daughter. So my daughter was born 3 weeks earlier. We named her Casey. She was my pride and joy. She was everything that I was waiting for. I had wanted to be a mother since I was like 3 years old, playing Barbies. I knew that's what I wanted. And I'm really girly, and so I wanted a daughter. And so when my daughter was born, it felt like my life was complete. I felt like everything that I had planned was going perfectly, and I was probably the happiest I had ever been. Now I was at home, I was adjusting to life as a mom, getting used to breastfeeding, getting used to late night feedings and lack of sleep. And but I was just so overjoyed, and life was just so perfect. And then all of a sudden it just very, very quickly changed. And that's what I've really learned throughout this process, is that, life is just so precious, and it really can change in the blink of an eye. So I went from being completely healthy, and then all of a sudden I got this strange tingle in my fingertip. And I didn't realize that was my very first symptom at the time, but months later I figured that out. And that's where the nerve damage started to happen, was in the finger. I ignored it because I thought maybe it was just a burn or something strange. I didn't think it was anything serious. But only about an hour later, I was walking around the house and I felt really tired and really drained. I had a kind of a hard time lifting my leg up when I went up the stairs. It felt heavier. It felt like it was just more challenging. It was kind of odd, but I thought, you're recovering from a C-section and you're also a new mom and you're really tired. You just need a good night's sleep. So I ignored it. But then, probably only an hour or so after that, I got a severe pain in my neck, and it came on very suddenly. It went from like 0 to 8 on the pain scale, and I had to take some pain medication. And I'm going like, what the heck is this? Did I sleep funny? Did I just like crank my neck strangely? I don't know what I did. And so I just kind of tried to ignore it and waited for the pain meds to kick in, but nothing worked, nothing helped. And I went online and I Googled my symptoms because it was like, okay, what's going on? I'm having hard trouble kind of walking and I'm having this pain in my neck. And Google told me that I had a pinched nerve. Like you said, the nerves, they're very important, and that's kind of the first thing it said. So that's what I thought I was dealing with. And I actually ended up, the pain got worse. I was in tears, and I actually went to a Medi Center and talked to a doctor, and he said, yeah, you just have a pinched nerve, and you just need to take some pain meds and see a physiotherapist, and you just need to go home. And so that's what I did. And I went home, but it only got worse from there. And very, very quickly, the pain got worse. Meds did nothing. I was walking up the stairs, couldn't get up the stairs, went to bed that night, hoping that I would wake up in the morning feeling better, but I couldn't sleep. And in the middle of the night, my daughter woke up to nurse, and I stood up from the bed, and that was when I actually fell and I collapsed. And so my legs
Wow.
basically gave out on me, and I could no longer stand. Now I was able to kind of lock my legs in place and stand, and it was then that I knew that something was seriously wrong.
What was the time frame from the tingling of your
So
fingers
the,
when you
the
fell?
so the tingling was at about noon that day, and I fell at about 2 in the morning. S-
Wow, so it was really within the 24-hour
It
period.
was, yes, it was within 24 hours. And it just happened so quickly. And I had my husband at the time, I'm divorced now. We went to the hospital. I had him just drop me off because I'm still thinking that it's a really severe pinched nerve. And I'm thinking, I don't want my daughter in the ER, and you guys just go home and I'll be home in a few hours. So I had him drop me off, and I remember I walked through the doors and I just had no idea like that would be the last time that I would actually step foot out of the hospital for over 3 months.
Wow. And what happened then?
So I went into the hospital, and I was very lucky that I talked to a doctor that was very honest and said, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'm going to try and find somebody that does. So they called a neurologist to come down and see me. And he said, yeah, your strength is very weak, even in my hands, which I hadn't noticed at that point. I was having a hard time walking. I was basically put into a bed, and they tested my reflexes, and he said, I think I know what you have. So again, I was very fortunate that he actually had seen a case of GBS before, and so he was able to recognize it, which doesn't always happen in GBS cases. Sometimes it takes a while to figure it
Of
out.
course. I mean, if it's like two out of 100,000, that's not a very common
No,
case.
and most doctors won't see it in their even careers. So very lucky in that way. And he said, I think you have Guillain-Barré syndrome. And I remember going, I have no idea what that is. I've never heard of it. And you just need to give me some medication, and then I need to go home. And he said, no, GBS is a very serious disorder, and we need to monitor you. You need to stay in the hospital, and we need to see if this gets any worse because it potentially can. And I remember thinking, I'm healthy, I'm 26, that's not going to happen to me. No worries, give me the meds, and then I'm going to leave. So my family rushed to my side, and it was terrifying because the pain just kept getting worse, and they had to put me on morphine and barely even touch the pain. And eventually I could no longer even get out of bed. I couldn't use the washroom anymore. And they started me on the treatment for GBS, which is basically kind of like a blood transfusion, similar to that. But it didn't seem to help, and everything's just got worse, and the paralysis spread. And it spread very, very quickly. And basically, within 72 hours of that very first symptom, I was completely paralyzed from the neck down, breathing on a ventilator. They had to rush me to ICU because I could no longer breathe on my own.
Wow, within 72 hours. That is absolutely mind-boggling. Now, what went through your head as a new mom? You had a baby and now you are paralyzed. What's going on? What was going on in your head at that time?
Well, I'm rushed into ICU, and there was some complications, and there was so much going on, and they shoved a breathing tube down my throat. I couldn't breathe, and I ended up having surgery, and I woke up and I was basically completely paralyzed. I couldn't talk, I couldn't move, I couldn't communicate, and I truly believed that I was dying. And my entire family was there, my friends were there, and they weren't sure that I was going to survive that very first night. And so to me it was done. It was over. My life was finished. And I tried to say goodbye. I was saying goodbye to everyone, and the doctors were fighting for me, saying, "No, you're not dying. We're going to get you through this. You just have to make it through this part, this really, really challenging part." And I just didn't believe them. I couldn't move. I couldn't communicate. I couldn't do anything. And my daughter was there right beside me, and I'm seeing her, and I remember just feeling so angry that this was happening to me so soon after she was born. I had so many plans for her. We had all these things that we were going to do for the next year. Here in Canada, we get a year off for mat leave. And so I had it all planned, and we were supposed to start mommy and me classes the next day. And my mom had to call and let them know I was in the hospital. And all of a sudden, it's just everything that I had wanted for my entire life was taken away from me. And my hope was just completely lost. And I just truly didn't believe that I was ever going to get out of there.
May is Stroke Awareness Month. Lifeline screening can help detect someone's risk of having a stroke or cardiovascular disease. Each year, more than 700,000 people attend one of those screenings for peace of mind or early detection, and I am one of them. You see, my mother passed away from cardiovascular disease, and I want to do everything I can to feel safe. So, join me and schedule your screening today. To book your appointment, simply click the link in my show notes. How did you get to the point that you said, okay, I will survive that, I will get over it? What happened that your hope was uh, basically inspired again and flamed up again?
So there's multiple things that the people around me helped me with, and there wasn't like this huge spark of hope that I suddenly had. It was like these tiny little moments along the way that I clung to. For example, I mean, my daughter being there, seeing her there while it was extremely hard to see her there, being taken care of by my family members, and knowing that I wasn't the one caring for her. It was very challenging, but it was also an inspiration. I knew that I wanted to get back to her, but I didn't know how, and I didn't think that I could. I didn't believe that I was strong enough to get through the pain. I was also heavily medicated, so dealing with a lot of hallucinations, a lot of nausea and vomiting, and so it was just pure torture. And I wasn't sedated by any means. I was fully awake and aware of everything that was going on around me, and nothing was improving. I was paralyzed for weeks and weeks, and nothing was happening. And it was so challenging, but the doctors and my nurses, they saw that, and so they did whatever they could. So for example, they called another GBS survivor who actually came to my bedside. He had recovered. He had been in the exact same position that I had. And he walked into the hospital room and he said, I was on a ventilator, I was in your shoes, and I recovered. So that was a huge turning point for me. It was to see that somebody else had gone through what I did. It gave me that hope and that belief that, you know what, if somebody else can do this, then maybe, just maybe I can too.
Absolutely. And what you just said, it was so powerful. If you can see or hear somebody went through the same thing and got out on the other side, then it gives you hope. And that's what I also inspire to do with this podcast, giving people hope that there are other people have gone through very challenging situations. And obviously, this is a very unique part. You mentioned earlier that you weren't able to communicate, meaning you were not able to speak.
Yes. So I had a ventilator tube basically shoved in my mouth for the first 10 days, and then they eventually had to move it to my throat. But it affected my vocal cords, so I couldn't communicate through speech. But the physiotherapy team brought in basically a communication board, and my family would point to letters, and then I would blink my eyes. That's how I communicated. We would spend hours trying to spell out one or two sentences, but I mean, we had all the time in the world. And so that's what we did. And then eventually, over time, I actually got better at communicating through my lips. And so I was able to mouth words. And my family got really, really good at reading my lips and figuring out what I was trying to say. So that's how I communicated for almost 3 months.
Uh, there was one story that I read, and that was about a woman, or it was a child at that point, who got into a coma. And many people gave up on her, but her mother. And eventually she woke up, but couldn't communicate, couldn't even blink her eyes. And so people, nurses were even saying, oh, she is just a vegetable. And were saying bad things about her, but she could hear everything. And
Yes.
wow, when I heard that, whoa, how powerful that is. Even though we may not be able to communicate, we are still awake and can hear everything. So, but at least you could blink your eyes, right?
Yes. Yes, I think I know who you're talking about. If it's the same person, Victoria Arlen, she's a huge
Yes,
inspiration. Yes. But
yes,
yeah, that's
yes.
something that I try to bring awareness to for ICU patients and for nurses that are working in ICUs and doctors, because it's so true, and that happened to me quite a bit as well, is that people would be talking about me or my case or other things, not realizing that I was fully aware of what they were talking about. And a lot of times I was exhausted and sleeping, but not. And I was awake and I could hear them, but they didn't realize that. So it's for medical professionals, it's definitely something that they need to be aware of.
How did you start the recovery process? Um, you said it was about 3 years that you were in the hospital.
No, it was three
What
months.
3 months?
Yes.
Okay, 3 months. But altogether, until you were back to your old, was that about a 3-year
Oh yeah,
process?
there's various kind of points along the way. I would say it was a year before I started to feel more like myself again. But yeah, it was about 3 years before I truly felt like my recovery was complete.
Wow.
GBS is a long, long journey, and it's different for everybody. It affects everybody so, so differently. And so how it worked for me is that it started in my fingertip. So that's where the paralysis faded first. So my fingertip moved. And I remember at the time my family was ecstatic. They were screaming in my room and, "Oh my God, Holly, your finger moved." But for me it was so challenging because it was like, yeah, my finger's moving, but I'm still in ICU and I'm still fighting for my life. I still can't breathe and I just still don't have hope to get out of here. But over time, slowly it started to fade. And so my arms started to move, and then I could wave, and then I could lift my arms, and then I could move my head, and then I could move my torso. And from there, the breathing, that was the hugest step that I had to take forward, was learning how to breathe on my own. And I remember we had to do these trials off the ventilator where I would last for like 15 seconds at a time. They would basically make me breathe on my own. And it felt like I was underwater, struggling to breathe, about to die. And it was so scary. And I remember crying and hyperventilating and think like, I don't think I'm ever going to be able to do this. I don't believe that I'm ever going to be able to breathe on my own. And something profound that that GBS survivor actually said to me, and he actually brought me a sign and he put it above my wall, basically right in front of my bed so I could stare at it. And it was a quote that said, "Courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's the quiet voice at day's end saying, I will try again tomorrow." And I remember when he gave that to me, I just cried because in that moment, I didn't feel like I was strong. I felt like I wanted to give up almost every day, and I was struggling, and I didn't feel strong. People were telling me, "You're so strong, Holly, you're gonna get through this." And I thought, I don't want to get through this. I can't get through this. This is too hard. But I would look at that sign and I would remind myself that, you know what? Courage doesn't roar. You don't need to be this strong fighter. Sometimes you can just be crying and saying, you know what, if I just try again tomorrow. And so that's what I did. Every day I promised myself that I would try. And over time, those 15 seconds off the ventilator turned to 20 seconds, and then a minute, and then 3 minutes, and five. And gradually over several weeks, I was able to get off the ventilator and basically breathe on my own. And I was moved out of ICU.
Fantastic. And what you said is so important to understand. Most people think, oh, it has to be something big, right? But the successes in life come through the little steps that we take. And that will become a compound effect. And when we realize that, we can achieve anything, anything in life.
It's so true. And even for me, like I went on to have a wonderful recovery. So after I got out of ICU, I was moved to a rehab hospital where I had to learn how to do everything. So I lost over 30 pounds of muscle in the hospital and had to learn how to hold cutlery and feed myself and how to brush my hair and take care of myself and basically learn how to do everything over again. And eventually I learned how to walk on my own, and I got out of the hospital after 126 days. My recovery from there, I just continued, like you said, those little tiny steps. I kept working on my physiotherapy, strengthened my muscles, started to fall in love with exercise and the way that it made me feel, and just it helped with muscle pain and fatigue. And eventually I ended up getting into the best shape of my life. I never exercised before, but I found this passion for it. And so to this day, I mean, I have these recovery videos, and there's a lot of before and afters of me before and being in the hospital, and then me now kind of in great shape. But people don't see those tiny little steps that I took. It's not this drastic before and after. It's those tiny little steps that I took every single day to getting there. And so that's what I always encourage people, that, you know what, I know you just got to take that chance and you just got to put in that work every single day and just try and try again.
Yes, and this is such an inspirational story that goes way beyond just talking about this illness and this condition. It's really about the recovery process, even if you think in that moment you can't. But the people around you are crucial, and the people that support you, like that one survivor, and then just having the courage to do it again and try again and again and again. So thank you so much for sharing. Now tell us what you do now. You're an advocate for that. So what do you do to bring some more awareness?
So basically, after I recovered, I mean, when I was in ICU, I felt like there was no hope. I felt like I was the only person in the world fighting this disease. And then I found out that was not true. There was thousands of people around the world, and I started connecting with people online. I started sharing my story, and I knew that I wanted to turn what I went through into something good. I wanted to turn it into a blessing. So that's what I did, and I started educating, doctors about it and trying to explain what my experience was like in ICU so that they could learn more about the disease. I started connecting with other survivors around the world and just giving them hope because I knew that like when my family was going through it, they didn't know what was going to happen, but I could give them that hope. I could give survivors and family members and say, you know what, I've made it out and there's hope that you can too. And so from there, I joined the GBS CIDP Foundation here in Canada, which is an organization that basically helps support patients around the country. And so I've put on awareness campaigns and connected with families and put on conferences. And then my favorite is going into hospitals and actually connecting with survivors and family members who are going through it in that moment to answer questions and just provide that help and support.
So beautiful. You truly are paying it forward. And that's what this is all about. When we have experiences and the knowledge and personal experiences that we have, if we can pass that on, that is already we are serving the purpose while we're here, right? Always looking for the silver lining.
Yes, and that's just it. It's my experience. Like I lost almost 6 months of my daughter's time. Like when I got home, she was over 6 months old. I missed her first smile. Missed her first outing in her stroller. There was just so much that I missed out on, and I was angry for quite a while about that. But now I see the blessings. She was my inspiration. I can't even imagine if I had gone through that and had not had a child because she was my motivation to get better. She also, she just, she's so amazing, and everything that we've gone through has made me appreciate being a mom that much more. And I don't know if I would have gotten that had I not gone through my experience with GBS. It's just made me so much more grateful and appreciative for anything and everything that I'm able to do with her today.
Wow. Thank you so much, Holly, for sharing your story and giving hope and inspiration to others who may go through this right now. That there is a way out and that we always, always have to keep our hope. So I wish you all the best going forward into the future, that you touch so many more lives. And of course, all the best for you and with your daughter and your family.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and I just wanted to mention, I mean, my book, I just wrote it and just published it, and there's so many inspirational moments in that story that I think transcend to anybody going through a struggle in their life. It's finding that support to help you through those dark times, and it's trying to believe in yourself that you can overcome anything. My story of being completely paralyzed in ICU, if you go look on my social media, you'll see what I looked like in ICU, and to go to where I am now, I mean, there's hope for everybody, I think, if you can see that.
And I'll make sure to put your contact information in the show notes, and also, of course, your social media where people can follow your story as well as your book. Congratulations on your
Thank you.
book. So I will make sure to put this in the show notes so people can order it from you. And
Perfect.
once again, thank you for being on the show today.
Thank you so much, Sabine, for having me. It's been an honor.
That was my interview, and if you enjoyed it, give us a 5-star review, leave a comment, and share it with your friends. Thanks for listening. Until I see you again, always remember, serve from the heart, follow your passion, and live the life you imagine.